Hey everyone, Cyborg Spaceman here, and I'm trying something a bit different with Transport Fever videos going forward. I'm actually using post commentary rather than recording as I play for now because this kind of game ends up having a lot of slower moments where you're thinking of your next moves or letting things just generally play out. So it's going to be easier doing my commentary afterwards rather than doing the talk as you play setup. In this video, I'm doing some work in Fairfield to improve the transportation network we're setting up. If you've played Transport Fever or games like it before, you know that stations have a limited range for attracting passengers or serving as a destination. This is called a catchment area, and I like to think of it as whatever things are within a modest walking distance of the station. If you highlight stations, you can see structures that are also highlighted nearby, showing what places that station serves. In Fairfield, however, as with a lot of towns, there are many places outside of the catchment area I want to serve as well. We solve this problem through something that's called network effects. Network effects means that when you connect additional lines or capabilities to an existing network, in this case to this train line, then that expands that network's reach and overall value. So, the way that we'll do this in a town like Fairfield is to use trams or buses, things like that, in order to connect neighborhoods to train stations, allowing more people access to the train than the catchment area alone would have given. The starting point for Fairfield's local transit is going to be this larger station. You can also use street side stops, but those can only serve one vehicle at a time, whereas this station can serve two or more depending on if you expand it over time. For meeting points for multiple lines, I prefer bigger over street side. I'm also equipping this station with tram tracks since I prefer trams as local transit over buses and carriages. Early on, trams perform much better than stagecoaches, and even later on, they can outperform buses by having much faster loading and unloading times. They don't typically have higher top speeds and require tram tracks throughout their routes, but for short distance travel like this, they are typically ideal. Now, while I'm building this tram line, I'm also setting up a ferry terminal. I'm not putting the boat lines in just yet, they're not exactly necessary at the moment, but I will be doing so in the near future. That's going to be going across this inland lake here over to Frisco, and I do want to have the land staked out ahead of time to make sure that I know where to set up stops or to make sure that other structures don't build on top of where I need the ferry to stop. So I'm just setting this up ahead of time. For the remainder of the town, the trams are using regular street side passenger stops. These are actually usable by both buses and trams, so both kinds of lines can share these. I kind of screwed up early on by accidentally putting a truck stop by the ferry terminal instead of a tram stop, but that's easy enough to bulldoze that and replace it. When placing street side stops, even though they're not independent structures, they do still function as regular stations for services. So they have their own catchment area, and when placing them, the map will highlight nearby structures in order to tell you which places can be accessed by that stop. This allows you to see what parts of the city each street side item is going to be able to gather passengers for or drop people off of after they get off the bus or tram. The next item that needs to be added for this kind of line is a depot to buy trams. While a single road depot can easily support multiple towns and multiple operations, you generally need a tram depot right in each town that's going to be using those, unless you want to run tracks all over inner city roads, which would get pretty expensive. I prefer setting mine a little bit out of the way, but you do need to put them at least somewhat close to the lines themselves, so just a slight offshoot, or if you have an open space in the city that's partway along where some of the tram tracks will be, that's pretty ideal. I just don't like having them nestled right in the middle of where a station's catchment area is, because that's real estate that can't be used by businesses or houses, things like that. You want to be able to give the city room to expand. So next comes the track. These get built into regular roads and need to cover every part of a tram's route, including every stop and every connecting street. As you could guess, trams don't run where there is no track. Early on, you have the option of building these tracks with or without overhead wires, but you swap out horse-drawn trams for electric ones pretty quickly, so I like to build wires when I install the tracks anyway, just for convenience. The final steps are to buy trams and set the lines. The horse-drawn trams are the only type available right now, so I'm buying 2 of them, 1 for each line. Then I'm setting 2 different tram lines to hit 2 sides of town. I like to use an out and back setup so that if the tram fills up with people headed to the station, it's not going to leave people at later stops stranded. I'm modifying these lines a little later in order to serve internal city transport, but we'll see that in the next video. Once these lines are set, you click each tram and assign it to the line you want, and it's off to collect passengers. So people began using the tram pretty quickly, and passenger numbers slowly grew on the train since the network now reached more places. In the next video, I'll set up a similar tram line in Vallejo in order to extend that station's reach. Connecting more destinations to the train network is the best way to improve its profitability, so I'll be setting up a lot of these tram lines across the map. So that's all for now. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe for more content. I post transport fever videos regularly, and in the next video, we'll see how the train does financially and how much it improves as we expand the network. Until then, see you next time.